Have you ever caught yourself doing something out of habit and suddenly wondered, why am I still doing this at my age? Maybe it's something small, like saying yes when you really mean no. Or maybe it's something deeper, like trying to keep up with the expectations of people who no longer even notice how much you're stretching yourself. If you're in your 70s or beyond, chances are you've built a life on responsibility. You've shown up for family, for work, for community. You've given, you've adapted, and you've probably gotten used to putting yourself second, third, sometimes last. And now, here you are in a new chapter of life. But for some reason, you're still carrying the weight of things that no longer serve you. Still trying to prove, please push through. But what if you didn't have to? What if this stage of life, right now, wasn't about keeping up or holding on, but about letting go? Letting go of the things that chip away at your peace. Letting go of the habits that steal your energy. Letting go of the quiet guilt that tells you you're only valuable when you're useful. Because here's the honest truth. After 70, you don't need to live by the same rules that guided your younger years. You've earned something more. You've earned the right to protect your time, your energy, and most of all, your peace. Today we're going to talk about 5 things that people over 70 can finally stop doing. Not because you're giving up, but because you're growing into the part of life where freedom matters more than approval, where honesty matters more than obligation, and where peace matters more than performance. So let's start with something that many people carry for far too long: the urge to please everyone. You might not even realize it's happening anymore. Maybe someone asks for a favor, watch the grandkids, attend a gathering, help with something you didn't plan for, and your automatic answer is yes. Not because you want to, not even because you can, but because somewhere deep down, you feel like you should. You think, they're counting on me. Or, it's not a big deal. Or the classic, I don't want to disappoint anyone. But what happens next? Your body aches. Your mood shifts. You get through it, but you feel drained. And slowly, something inside you starts to feel a little more invisible. A little less in control of your own time. A little more like your life is running on someone else's schedule. This need to please, to keep the peace, to be the one who says yes, it's not just a habit. For many of us, it's a role we've been playing for decades. Especially if you grew up in a time when being a good parent or spouse or friend meant putting yourself last. But here's the thing. Just because that was the norm back then doesn't mean it has to stay that way now. I once knew a woman named Margaret. She was 73, retired, and had raised 3 kids and 6 grandkids. For most of her life, she was the glue. She hosted every holiday, babysat whenever someone asked, planned every birthday, cleaned up every mess, and kept every secret. Until one day she told me, I woke up and I was just tired, not sleepy, exhausted in my bones, and I realized not one person had asked how I was doing. That day, Margaret made a quiet decision. She stopped saying yes when she meant no. Not with anger, not with guilt, but with a kind of clarity that comes when you've finally had enough. She started protecting her time. She rested when she needed to. She started doing things just for herself, gardening, journaling, even taking afternoon naps with the phone off. And you know what? Her family didn't fall apart. Some people stepped up. Some relationships shifted. But she felt more alive than she had in years. It wasn't selfish. It was necessary. You don't need to be everything for everyone anymore. You've already given so much. Now it's your time to receive. And the people who truly care about you won't just understand, they'll appreciate the honesty. Here's a thought I love to share. Your no can be just as holy as your yes. When you protect your peace, you make space for the right kind of connection. The kind that doesn't require you to bend yourself in half to keep it. So ask yourself, when was the last time you did something just because you wanted to? Not because it was expected. Not because someone needed you. But just because it felt good or restful or joyful? If it's been a while, maybe today's the day to start again. not with guilt, not with apology, but with quiet confidence, because you matter, and you deserve a life that reflects that. Now let's talk about another quiet pressure that weighs on so many people, even after 70, the pressure to look young. We live in a culture that worships youth. Smooth skin, thick hair, perfect posture. Everywhere you look, there's a product, a pill, or a promise that says, fix this, hide that, don't look your age. And it doesn't stop just because you hit retirement. In fact, for some people, the pressure only gets stronger. You notice a new wrinkle and you think, should I do something about that? Your hair turns silver and someone says, you'd look 10 years younger if you dyed it. And maybe for a while you do. You cover, you tighten, you smooth. But deep down, you start to wonder, who are you really doing it for? Walter, a man I met at a community center, was 78 when he finally stopped dyeing his hair. He had been doing it for nearly 20 years. Every few weeks, like clockwork. One day, he looked in the mirror and said, I'm tired of hiding from myself. So he stopped. Let his hair go white. Let the lines on his face settle in. And he told me, that was the first time in decades I felt like people were actually seeing me. Because here's the truth. Looking young isn't the same as being well. And it certainly isn't the same as being happy. Sometimes chasing a youthful appearance becomes less about feeling good and more about fear. Fear of being overlooked, dismissed, or seen as less than. But that fear is rooted in a lie. The lie that aging somehow makes you less valuable. It doesn't. You know what real beauty looks like? It looks like presence, like wisdom in your eyes, like the quiet strength of someone who's been through life and still smiles. The people who love you, the ones who matter, don't love your hair color or your skin texture. They love your laugh, the way you listen without judgment, the stories you tell, the patience you've earned. You're not here to compete with youth. You're here to embody something youth hasn't earned yet. Perspective. There's absolutely nothing wrong with taking care of yourself. In fact, you should. Stay sharp. Eat well. Move your body. But don't confuse self-care with self-erasure. You don't have to chase the past to be valuable in the present. So the next time you feel the urge to hide a wrinkle or apologize for looking your age, pause. Look in the mirror. And remind yourself, every line on your face is a chapter of a story that's still being written. Own it. Wear it with pride. Because that story, it's yours. And it's beautiful. Let's take a breath here together. You've made it through so much. And now, you're being invited to release the pressure, the performance, and the pretending. Because the real freedom of this season of life comes when you finally stop doing what no longer fits and start living in the truth of who you really are. And while we're on the subject of truth, there's something else that often lingers quietly in the lives of people over 70. It's the habit of pretending everything is okay, even when it's not. You know what I mean. That smile you put on when someone asks, "How are you?" And your automatic answer is, "I'm fine." Even if deep down you're carrying loneliness, grief, fatigue, or just a feeling you can't quite name. For many of us, especially those raised in a generation that prized toughness and emotional control, showing vulnerability feels uncomfortable, maybe even shameful. We were taught that strength means not complaining, not burdening others, not crying in public. Just push through, stay cheerful, and don't make a fuss. But here's something we rarely say out loud. Pretending you're fine doesn't make you strong. It makes you invisible. You hold it all together. You put on that brave face, and people around you, even the ones who love you, assume you don't need anything. Because you never say otherwise. And that silence, it slowly builds walls between you and the very people who want to be there for you. They can't offer support if they don't know you're hurting. And eventually, that loneliness can feel even heavier than the pain you were trying to hide in the first place. Dorothy, a woman I met not long ago, was 81 when her husband passed away. For months afterward, she told everyone she was managing just fine. "I'm strong," she'd say with a polite smile. "Keeping busy." But when she got home, she'd sit in her quiet kitchen and feel like the world had gone on without her. She missed her old life, her old rhythm, but she didn't want to bring anyone down. It wasn't until she joined a small grief group at her church that things began to shift. She started opening up, not with drama, but with honesty. She talked about the long afternoons, the empty chair at the table, the weight of being alone. And something surprising happened. Her laughter came back. Her connection to others deepened. She didn't feel like she was performing anymore. She was living. Fully, truthfully, and without that aching pressure to pretend. You see, real courage isn't in pretending nothing hurts. Real courage is in saying, "I could use a little help." Or even just, "Today's a hard day." That kind of honesty doesn't push people away. It draws them closer. It creates space for empathy, for kindness, for real conversation. We weren't put on this earth to suffer quietly. And we weren't meant to carry life's heavy moments alone. Your pain doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. And your story, with all its highs and lows, is worth being shared. So if you find yourself biting your tongue or brushing off your own emotions, take a breath. Remind yourself that you deserve to be seen, not just as a cheerful face, but as a full person with real feelings. And if someone asks how you're doing, maybe, just maybe, you can answer a little more honestly. That brings us to another habit that's so deeply ingrained, we often don't realize we're doing it: apologizing for the way we choose to live. Have you ever caught yourself saying things like, "Sorry, I'm not much fun anymore," or "I know I'm being a burden," or even, "I hope that's okay," when talking about your routine, your needs, your choices? It's subtle. Sometimes it's just a tone. But that quiet apology, it sends a message to yourself and others that your pace, your preferences, or your presence need justification. But here's the truth. After 70, you don't owe anyone an apology for living life in a way that brings you peace. You've earned the right to set your own rhythm. Whether that means declining a noisy party, skipping a trip, needing more rest, or choosing stillness over stimulation, your choices don't need approval. They deserve respect. Frank, a friend I've known for years, used to attend church events every Sunday without fail. Potlucks, picnics, prayer groups, you name it. But as he got older, he started to feel more tired after these gatherings than uplifted. He loved his community, but the noise, the pace, the constant activity, it no longer fed his soul. Still, every time he stayed home, he felt guilty. Like he had to explain. Like he was disappointing someone. Until one day his daughter said to him, "Dad, you don't need a reason. If it brings you peace, that's enough." That sentence stuck with him. And from that point on, he stopped apologizing. He stopped explaining. He started honoring what he needed: quiet mornings, slower Sundays, fewer obligations. And in doing so, he didn't lose connection. He deepened it. Because he was finally showing up in ways that felt real, not forced. The pressure to apologize comes from old beliefs. Many of us were raised to think that our worth came from how helpful, agreeable, or accommodating we were. That the best kind of person was one who never made waves, who always smiled and said yes, who never asked for too much. But you're not here to shrink yourself to fit someone else's comfort. You're here to grow into your truest self, unapologetically. So the next time you catch yourself saying, "Sorry, I'm not," or "I hope that's okay," pause. Ask yourself, am I really doing something wrong? Or am I just afraid of taking up space? You are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to have needs, to move slowly, to speak honestly, to make choices that others might not understand. That's not being difficult, that's being alive. And maybe, just maybe, the more you embrace that truth, the more others will too. So take that deep breath, Stand tall. Speak clearly. You don't need to soften your edges just to make others comfortable. You've earned your rhythm. You've earned your peace. And you don't have to explain it to anyone. And speaking of space, there's one more thing that so many people carry into their 70s and beyond, often without realizing just how much it weighs them down. It's the quiet, persistent need for approval. Even after a lifetime of experience, even after raising families, building careers, and navigating all of life's twists and turns, there can still be that whisper in the back of your mind. Will they like me? Will they think I'm enough? Will they approve of the way I'm living now? It's subtle, but powerful. You hold back an opinion in a family conversation. You nod along even when you disagree. You dress a certain way, behave a certain way, go places you don't want to go, not because it feels right, but because you think it might keep the peace. Or worse, because someone might criticize or misunderstand you if you don't. That constant scanning for permission, is this okay? Am I okay? Is exhausting. And the older we get, the more clear it becomes. No matter how hard you try, you will never please everyone. Joanne, a woman I met at a community center, was in her early 80s and had the brightest energy you can imagine. She loved wearing bold colors, deep purples, bright oranges, even metallic gold on occasion. But for years, she toned it all down. Wore beige, spoke softly, avoided calling attention to herself. Why? Because her daughter once told her, "You need to act your age." So Joanne did. Or at least, she tried. But something in her dimmed. One morning she told me she looked in the mirror and asked herself, "Whose life am I living?" That same week she put on her favorite red earrings, bought a vibrant scarf, and walked into the community room with her shoulders back and her head high. And you know what? People smiled. People noticed. But more importantly, she noticed. She felt like herself again. Because the truth is, you don't need permission to be yourself. Not anymore. Not at this stage. The people who really love you aren't interested in a watered-down version of you. They want you. Fully. Authentically. With all your quirks and wisdom and lived-in beauty. And those who expect you to shrink to make them comfortable? Their approval isn't worth your peace. There's a kind of freedom that only comes when you stop chasing the moving target of acceptance. And it is a moving target. Today they want you to be cheerful. Tomorrow they want you to be quiet. Next week they want you to be more helpful, more flexible, more this, less that. Trying to meet every expectation is like trying to hit a bullseye while blindfolded on a spinning carousel. You'll never get there. And even if you do, you'll be too dizzy to enjoy it. So ask yourself, is this true to me? If the answer is yes, then you don't need a stamp of approval from anyone else. And if the answer is no, then no amount of praise will make it feel right anyway. This is your time to live according to your own compass. To do what aligns with your values, your energy, your joy. Not to impress or perform, but to be whole. To be honest. To be at peace. And maybe that's what growing older is really about. Not fighting age, not pretending, not proving, but stepping into the deep, rich truth of who you are and living from that place every single day. Because when you stop doing the things that no longer serve you, when you stop pushing, pleasing, pretending, apologizing, and chasing, you start making room. Room for rest. Room for authenticity. Room for relationships that nourish you. And most of all, room for you. Now, I know it's not always easy. Letting go of old habits, especially ones that have been part of your identity for decades, can feel like stepping off a moving train. There's fear. There's uncertainty. Sometimes there's grief. But there's also a deep, quiet power waiting on the other side. The power to choose. You get to choose how you spend your time, who you spend it with, what you say yes to, and what you finally give yourself permission to say no to. You get to choose peace over performance, connection over comparison, meaning over noise. You've walked through so much already. You've earned the right to stop running, to stop apologizing, to stop asking for permission. You've earned the right to just be. So if no one has told you this lately, let me be the one. You are enough, just as you are. You don't have to earn rest. You don't have to prove value. Your story, your presence, your being is enough. Take a breath. Sit back. Feel the weight fall off your shoulders. You are free. And if any part of today's message resonated with you, I hope you'll share it. Leave a comment and tell us, what's one thing you're ready to stop doing? One thing that no longer fits who you are today? I promise you, your story matters. Your truth matters. And your words just might inspire someone else who's watching, someone who needed to hear exactly what you have to say. And if you found this video helpful or comforting, I'd love for you to click that like button, subscribe to the channel Strong Elderly Life, and turn on the bell so you don't miss any future videos. Your support truly helps us keep creating content that informs, encourages, and uplifts. Thank you for spending this time with me. Thank you for your wisdom, your honesty, and your courage. And most of all, thank you for being you. Here's to living with more peace, more freedom, and more truth. Because this stage of life isn't the end of your story. It's the most honest chapter yet. We'll see you in the next video.